Every skill has the same shape. You start out by making rapid progress. It feels great. You can see yourself getting better week over week. And then somewhere right around the beginner to intermediate level, progress just stops. You're putting in the same reps, same intensity, same amount of time, and you're just not getting any better. Most people think this is just how it works. Your talent runs out, you hit your ceiling, or you need to push through with more discipline. That's wrong. Plateaus aren't inevitable. They're happening for very specific reasons. And once you understand the reason you're plateauing, you can actually do something about it. My name is Jesse. I'm a designer, teacher, and a coach, and I've been working with clients through these plateaus for about 10 years. In almost every case, the plateau is caused by one of four things. In this video, I'll walk through all four, how to diagnose which one you're suffering from, and what to do about it. Number one, and by far the most common, is that you don't know what to do in order to get better. The easiest way to describe this is what got you here won't get you there. You did certain things in order to get to the level that you're at, and even though you continue to do those things with the same frequency and the same intensity, you're not getting any better. This is extremely frustrating. It's where the majority of people give up because they're not seeing the benefit of the work that they're putting in. This is the problem that I was facing in my last video when I was trying to get better at how I used AI. This is a knowledge gap problem, and the solution comes from creating a structure. Usually at this stage of a plateau, it's time to redefine and specify your goal. I like to use SMART goals because they're specific and measurable, but any method that you use of setting goals would work here. Once you have that goal, you need to break down the skills that you need in order to accomplish that goal. And then once you have that list of skills, it's time to evaluate where you are in relation to each skill. How you do this will depend on the discipline that you're trying to improve at, but some of the methods that I've used for evaluation in the past are game film, so recording a beach volleyball game, logging metrics in an Excel sheet. I used AI in order to help me create an exam to evaluate my knowledge on concepts around AI automation. Or if you're trying to learn a second language, you can record the conversation and then after the fact go back and look and see where you're making mistakes, whether you don't have the word, so it's a vocabulary mistake, or maybe it's grammar or pronunciation. After you get the results back from your evaluation, you can look at the skills that you deconstructed originally and see where you need to focus your attention in order to get better. This is the personalized learning plan that I talked about in my last video, but it looks at your goals and where you are at specifically in relation to those goals. The last step in this process is to look at those selected skills and sequence them in a way that is chronologically appropriate. It makes sense. One skill builds off of the next one, while also focusing on getting early wins so that you can maintain motivation throughout the process. The next biggest reason for plateauing comes from inconsistent practice. You may be very dedicated to learning something in the beginning, but then life happens and you can't put as many repetitions in as you used to. A lot of times this is tied to the first reason we mentioned for plateauing, because if you don't know what to do and you're continually putting in reps, but you're not seeing those rewards, you become less likely to put in the reps that you need in order to actually get better. In this case, the root cause of inconsistent practice is a motivation problem. So if you go through the process I just mentioned above, where you identify your goal, you deconstruct the skills you need in order to get there, evaluate where you are, select the right skills based on your evaluation, and then sequence them in a good order, this problem of not finding time to put in repetitions can actually be solved because your repetitions will become much more useful and it will be more motivating when you actually go in to do the practice. But let's assume it's not a motivation problem, or maybe you've already gone in and you've built the plan so that you know what to do. The first question you should be asking in that case is, how do I get the most gain or the most progress out of the fewest repetitions? And this is tied to the next reason why people plateau: ineffective practice. This becomes a practice design problem. And to solve a practice design problem, we have to look at how effective we're drilling. To drill effectively, you have to accurately define the minimum effective dose. The minimum effective dose is the smallest amount of time, repetitions, concepts understood in order to make progress towards your goal. Ideally, your minimum effective dose is as close to zero as possible. This is obviously impossible to achieve, but the idea when you try to get to a minimum effective dose as small as possible, it means that with a small amount of maybe effort or time put in, you get a large amount of progress. This all depends on you selecting the right skills. So that's why that plan has to be step one. Decreasing the minimum effective dose requires you to master the skill of deconstruction. The larger the skill, the less focused the practice. The smaller we can make the skill, the more focus you can practice, which therefore decreases the size of the minimum effective dose. If we can deconstruct the skill into the smallest possible parts, then our minimum effective dose becomes mastering those tiny parts. What's super cool about this concept is sometimes when we select the right micro skills to work on, we find out that it was a bottleneck that was blocking our progress everywhere else in the larger skill. Okay, so what does this look like? I have a very strange example to illustrate this point. One of my favorite songs is a Brazilian rap song. It's called Deixa Me Ir, or Let Me Go. And it's from a band called 1 Kilo. And I was trying to sing along at a specific part, but I kept getting caught up because it's super fast. I'm not a native Portuguese speaker. I think I learned when I was about 25. But even for a native speaker, it would be difficult because the song is super fast. So what I did was I opened Spotify and I went to the specific line that I was messing up. And I went through syllable by syllable, listening to how the artist was saying the lyrics and then repeating over and over until I got the correct sequence of syllables. And then I started doing it very slowly and then sped up over time so that I could match the rate of the song. This is, if for some reason you're not trying to master a Brazilian rap song, this would be the same process that you would use in order to work on a guitar solo or a specific area of a song that you're messing up. You don't want to focus on the whole song because it's just too big. The chunking is way too big. If you focus on that very specific part where you're messing up and the transition before and after that part, then you'll make much more progress on that entire song and the skill as a whole. This took me 5 minutes to figure out, and I've been singing this song incorrectly for the past, I say 5 years, it's probably more like 7. Now, back to the problem of inconsistent practice. You may be thinking, I told you that I don't practice because I'm busy, and you told me to practice more effectively, and that doesn't solve the problem of me being too busy to practice. And you're correct, but being busy is usually a surface level excuse, meaning there's almost always a reason why people aren't doing something that would help them accomplish their goals. Usually it's because goals are hard and overwhelming. So if the goal is not well planned out and you're not confident that your next practice will help bring you closer towards your goal, you'll find something else to do instead of practicing. I've been doing this with clients for the last 10 years, and these 3 things alone almost always solve the problem of inconsistent practice. But let's assume it really is your schedule that's causing you to not practice. There is an exercise that we can take on that will help you solve that. The exercise, I think James Clear might even talk about this in Atomic Habits, but the concept, what you're going to do for 3 to 5 days, probably no longer because it's kind of taxing to do. For 3 to 5 days, every hour on the hour that you are awake, so think 12 to 16 hours a day, you have an alarm go off, or you can use like an Apple Watch and have like a stand-up thing go off where every hour on the hour, you look at what you did during that past hour and you write it down. You'll almost always find that you're not as effective or efficient as you thought you were, or that's how, in my experience, that's what I always find, and that you probably have some habits that are worth replacing. If you find those habits, you've already gone through the process of making a minimum effective dose of practice. Figure out if you can, instead of grabbing your phone and scrolling through TikTok or whatever it is, can you fit in one of those practice sessions? The fourth and final reason why people plateau is because they're not receiving effective feedback. They have no error or correction loop that lets them know when they're making a mistake, why they're making the mistake, and what they can do in order to fix it. To quote the great 20th century philosopher Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. The plan that we built in step 1 is a suggestion. It's something that we believe will solve our problems, but we have to keep measuring in order to make sure it's actually making a difference. As we gather more information, we get a clearer idea of what our problems are, and then we can adapt the plan in order to fit the problems. The way we do this is we set up an evaluation system. Hopefully this is something that you already did when you were creating your plan, and you can probably use this same system to measure progress as you go. You will need to adjust it as time goes on, because generally you find out that what you were measuring in the beginning maybe not be the thing that you actually need to be measuring in order to go forward with your goal, or maybe there's inefficiencies in the way that you're measuring. I went deep into how I would create this evaluation system in the first video on this channel, but as a brief overview, I'll go over kind of the 3 principles to think about when you're creating an evaluation system. Principle number 1 is to record yourself, and that, whatever that means for the skill it is that you're trying to build. This literally could be a recording. If you're learning a foreign language, I recommend recording the conversations. If you're trying to improve in a sport, you should have some recordings of what you're doing in the game. This could be if you're learning to code or learning a new coding language, version the code so you can come back and look at it after the fact and see how you're kind of progressing and what mistakes you're making. If you're trying to learn a new software, do a screen recording of you completing a specific task. Principle number 2 is to create objective measurements. You want a record of what you're doing. So this measurement could look like, maybe if you want to get better at basketball, you can count you go into your stats. How many turnovers do you have? What is your shot percentage? How often are you behind the play? If you're doing language learning, what are the mistakes that you're making? What are the categories of those mistakes? Are you making mistakes in grammar or vocabulary or pronunciation? If you're learning a new software, when you look at your video recording, what are the steps that cause you to stumble or cause you to make errors in the process? Principle number 3 is to dig into the why behind your mistakes. If we go back to our sports example, in basketball, why are you turning over the ball? Are you dribbling ineffectively? If we look at language learning, why are you making so many pronunciation mistakes? Is there a certain sound that you don't know how to make? Then maybe we go back into our minimum effective dose, practice that sound, and you won't make that language mistake anymore. This is also the step in this process where you hire a coach. I don't necessarily recommend doing this before. It's not going to hurt, but after you have a video recording of what you're doing, you have looked into the measurements, you know exactly what's happening, you've kind of tried to dig into why the mistakes are happening, a coach or an outside observer who knows the subject that you're trying to learn can go in and give you their opinion of why you're messing up. So all of this is to say, plateaus are not inevitable. They suck, but if you're able to implement these steps, you will be able to break through them. If you like this video but still want extra guidance on how to do this, I do offer one-on-one sessions. You can work with me directly. You'll fill out a form and we will diagnose which of these 4 bottlenecks is most relevant to your situation. And in the end, you'll leave with a personalized learning system that gets you past this plateau and back to making progress again. It's only $97 right now. It's cheaper than it will ever be. Candidly, it's because I want to get as many reps in as possible before probably turning this into a course or a program. And thanks so much for watching. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next video.